Hello, my name is Scott Bricker, and I'm the Interim Vice President of Destination Development at Travel Oregon. Travel Oregon is proud to be a founding member, lead sponsor, and active partner of the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Summit. Oregon's natural beauty and world-class outdoor recreation opportunities inspire Oregonians and visitors to all corners of our amazing state. We also understand that natural resources are not limitless, but they must be carefully developed and stewarded to ensure their preservation and enjoyment for generations to come. It takes everyone here, all of us, from various backgrounds and differing perspectives and abilities to make the outdoors accessible and sustainable for the people of Oregon. And the summit, whether virtual or in person, aims to bring us together to build professional connections and personal relationships, to impart knowledge and share successful field practices, and inspire us and ground us to turn that inspiration into action. This year, to continue our celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreation Trail System Act, our CEO, Todd Davidson, will share more about Travel Oregon's passion for the outdoors and investments in trail systems in Oregon.
Hi, my name's Todd Davidson, the CEO at Travel Oregon. Travel Oregon's vision is a better life for all Oregonians through strong, sustainable local communities that welcome a diversity of explorers. Scenic beauty and outdoor recreation are at the core of Oregon's ethos, and it's no surprise that both scenic beauty and outdoor recreation are leading drivers for travel and tourism trips throughout Oregon. We know that trails of all types, whether by paddling or hiking, cycling, skiing, or on horseback, are a primary way that people get out and experience our diverse beauty. Travel Oregon is fully invested in creating access and opportunities to and within Oregon's outdoors through developing new signature trails, as well as sustaining our natural environment through stewardship investments. Travel Oregon and our regional partners have invested heavily in developing signature trail projects like the historic Columbia River Highway, the Oregon Timber Trail, the Oregon Coast Trail, the Salmonberry Trail. In fact, during the 2020-2021 fiscal year alone, Travel Oregon has invested over $720,000 in grants, over $318,000 in our Destination Ready program, and nearly $148,000 through the Oregon Trails Fund, which includes investments from our regional partners as well. The total, nearly $1.2 million in 1 year alone. And we and our regional partners also invest just as strongly in sustaining and stewarding trails in Oregon, with investments such as the Trail Ambassadors, Trails Coalitions, and collaboratives like the Oregon Trails Coalition, trail stewardship activities, funding of trailheads, bathrooms, and wayfinding signage. And we utilize our inspirational and instructive consumer content to show the world the essence of our beauty through our imaginative campaigns, sharing the 7 wonders of Oregon, and supporting the safe return of recreational travel to support local economies. And using our Take Care Out There messaging to ensure that all of our content is backed up with messages about how to recreate in Oregon safely and responsibly. Travel Oregon is a proud partner in making the outdoors accessible to all through a wide diversity of world-class trails, and to join with all of you in celebrating the 50th anniversary of Oregon's recreation trail system.
Welcome everyone to the 2021 Oregon Outdoor Recreation Summit. I'm Kaylin O'Brien Feeney, the director of the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Office, and along with the Oregon Trails Coalition and Travel Oregon would like to welcome you to this year's summit. Our goal with the summit is to bring together Oregon's outdoor recreation community to learn, build relationships, and find solutions to the challenges we face in developing and elevating outdoor recreation opportunities to best serve Oregon communities and to celebrate and protect our natural, cultural, and historic wonders. Frankly, I'm thrilled about the content that we have to share these next few days between these virtual sessions, our film night, our networking hub, the picnic table, and in-person stewardship and industry networking events. Much like in 2020, the importance of Oregonians' access to the outdoors has been ever present in 2021. We continue to see high levels of interest in getting outside and enjoying the physical and mental health benefits that time in nature provides. This year, we've also seen more progress towards recovery as communities work to rebuild from devastating wildfires in 2020 and to operate through the pandemic. Increased local, state, federal, and private investments in outdoor recreation are helping that economic recovery, and many programs geared towards equitable access are back up and running. And in that vein of the outdoors as a force for good and the partnerships required to make progress towards a more equitable and sustainable future, I can think of no one better to provide a short welcome message than a man I consider a friend and mentor, an ardent advocate of equitable access to the outdoors, Oregon's first gentleman, Mr. Dan Little. After Dan's message, a short land acknowledgement will also be shared. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Galen. It's so great to be here. You know, it's been so long since we've actually met in person, and I was hoping to be able to do it this year, but clearly that didn't work out. So on behalf of Governor Brown and myself, I just want to welcome everybody to the 2021 Outdoor Recreation Summit. I remember riding a trail. It was between Montana and Idaho. It's called the Hiawatha Trail. It's a bike trail, and it's an old railroad line. And you go over these big trusses, and there's a number of tunnels you go through. But at one point, you go through this. It's like a 1.7 mile long tunnel, and it is pitch black in there. I mean, if you've ever been in a lava tube and had that cold, damp feeling, and it being so dark that you can't even see the hand in front of your face, that's exactly what this is like for over 1.5 miles. And so I rode the trail, got up to this tunnel, thought, I'll just give it a try. They tell you to bring a big bright light. And of course, being the less than prepared outdoorsman at the time, I carried a little headlight that barely lit my way, and it went on my bicycle helmet. And if you, as you're riding along, I could see dimly like 10 feet out in front of me, but every so often I'd have to turn my head to one side or the other to see the sides of the walls, because I couldn't see actually the sides of the tunnel. And, I was thinking about that the other day, and for me, and I'm going to talk just a minute about COVID, is that's what COVID has felt for me the last couple of years. It's sort of this dark, damp kind of feeling, and we're slowly coming out of it. It's sort of been a fascinating journey for me, as you know, being the first gentleman of Oregon, which is, I know, the oddest title ever. I get to sit sort of in the bleacher seats of everything that goes on, and so, watching Governor Brown try and navigate this, looking at the other governors in the states, all the other countries, as they navigate this pandemic, there's no easy answers. I mean, it is incredibly hard, and we try and blame others. Sometimes we demonize others, but really, the real enemy is COVID itself. And now we actually have some tools to fight the pandemic. And so thinking about the Hiawatha Trail, after you get through it for about 1 mile, and you've got maybe 7/10, half a mile to go, you start seeing this little pinpoint of light. And you're riding along, you're feeling a little bit more confident, it's getting a little brighter and a little brighter. And so that's what it feels like where we're at right now. It's like, well, we're kind of through the darkest part. We can see that pinpoint of light, and we're just going to keep riding as fast as we can until we get there. The one huge bright spot is outdoor recreation. I mean, when you think how popular outdoor recreation has become, and what an amazing place it's been, especially for Kate and I, but pretty much everyone. It's sort of this beacon of light. I started the initiative called Roadmap to the Outdoors. It was about making the outdoors accessible for all Oregonians. And I can't believe how important that work really has become. I mean, it is just so critical. And Kaylin mentioned this about, for our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. I get out, I go hiking, I go biking, I do something at least once a week just to kind of cleanse my soul. So on top of that, we're also celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreation Trail Systems Act. It's just, all the work that's being done between Steph Knoll and the Outdoor Trails Coalition, it's just phenomenal. So I'd just like to thank everybody that helped put all this together. Thanks to Steph Knoll, Travel Oregon, Kaylin O'Brien Feeney for all your work on the Office of Outdoor Recreation. And I look forward to our keynote speaker, Chevon Powell, and her incredible work. So I wish to welcome everyone and have a great 2021 summit. Thank you.
Over 60 tribes and bands of indigenous peoples have lived in the Northwest region since time immemorial. Despite the treaties of the 1800s, termination, restoration, and other barriers, 9 tribes are currently federally recognized in what is now Oregon. Other federally recognized tribes outside of Oregon have interests in the state, and still others are working toward this recognition. Today, tribes work extensively to manage resources throughout their original territories, playing active roles in their regions, counties, states, and communities, leveraging their extensive knowledge and history of the area. In Oregon, outdoor recreation occurs on the ancestral lands of these original peoples and current caretakers. We are called to seek out the history of the places where we recreate and continue to learn how to best participate in their caretaking.
Thank you, Dan, and for the land acknowledgement as well. Before introducing our keynote speaker, I'd like to touch on a few short housekeeping notes. First, just go ahead and please keep introducing yourselves in the chat function. I'd also like to extend our gratitude for sponsors of the 2021 Summit. This year's sponsors include Oregon State Parks, REI Co-op, Travel Oregon, Oregon State University, Oregon Outdoor Alliance, Oregon Department of Forestry, and Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Oregon Parks Forever, Oregon Outfitters and Guides Association, Metro, and Cabela's Outdoor Fund. As you've likely noticed, we're hosting this conference on Brand Live. The platform includes many of the same features that you're likely accustomed to from our last year and a half of likely many online meetings for most of us, including the ability to ask for technical support questions or comments and questions for our presenters in the chat. So, and now for the main event, our keynote speaker. Chevon Powell is the founder of Golden Bricks Events and the Refuge Outdoor Festival, an annual outdoor recreation camping experience geared toward Black, Indigenous people of color. Powell is an experienced event professional and community advocate for outdoor access and environmental justice. She is a native Texan, hiker, backpacker, camping enthusiast, and napper. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Chevon and her perspective in preparation for our summit, and know that you all in our audience will also benefit from the perspective she'll share here in her opening keynote, Partnerships, Building Relationships for an Equitable Outdoor Future. Welcome, Chevon. Our stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Kellen. Thanks for inviting me today. I'm excited to have this time with you all. Although my business is based in Seattle, Washington, I am coming to you from Houston, Texas, the land of the Sona people. If you don't already have a pen, I would suggest you grab one. You're going to get to hear from 4 perspectives on partnerships. So feel free to write some notes, but also write some questions and drop them in the chat. Hopefully after we get to the panel, we can answer some of those questions. Like previously mentioned, I am Chevon Powell, the founder of Golden Bricks Events, which is a company that produces special events and festivals geared toward addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the outdoors. I want you to remember the word unbelievable. When I was 3 years old, I started attending a camp for burn survivors. This was my introduction to the outdoors in a place where I got to grow and learn with people that looked like me. Fast forward a number of years, okay, more like 30, I went on my first solo backpacking trip and was promptly pulled over by the police and questioned on why I was in the area. I told him I was there for outdoor recreation and backpacking, and he told me my story was unbelievable. He also called backup and told backup that my story was unbelievable. After the situation was resolved and I got let go, I didn't have anything. I was there for outdoor recreation. I just thought to myself, what could I do? I had event planning experience. So I went out to community and said, hey, I would love to create some events for BIPOC folks. What would you all want? So I interviewed and surveyed folks. And from that, we launched the Refuge Outdoor Festival in 2018. This was our first and now is our signature event. In the last 3 years since we launched that, we have also launched and produced Sundays Outside, a celebration of Black folks, which we wrapped last night in partnership with Washington State Parks. Refuge Day, which is a shorter event that's open to all in community as well. And we are now launching Public Lands Unearthed, a BIPOC oral history project, bringing out the stories of BIPOC folks on public lands in Washington. A lot of this and our growth is due to the amazing partners that we've been able to develop over the years and the community that we stay connected to. Before I continue on, I just want to say in today's talk, I will be centering my experience and the experiences of BIPOC folks. And when I talk about BIPOC or people of color, I am talking about an inclusive intersectional community. So that also includes non-binary, women, queer, differently abled, neurodivergent, low income, and a number of other identities that people hold. I am also going to center my experience as a person that's in community and is addressing the needs of community in my partnerships. I would like to say from the beginning, I do not represent all thoughts of all Black people or BIPOC folks. I'll share examples of what I have done and the success that I have in the care that I've given to the community that I serve. Again, I really appreciate coming today. And like Kellen mentioned, I'm gonna talk a little bit and then we'll move right into the panel. So back to the police incident. After that was all over, my relationship with the outdoors really changed. And at that time, I was already really active outdoors, camping and hiking. I had moved to Seattle because I passed through 24 hours and saw mountains, trees, and water, and I wanted to be in nature. I was also working in the outdoor industry as an event planner for REI, but even with all of that, people didn't see me as a part of the outdoors, and that hurt. So I wanted to address it. Because it wasn't just the police, it was, coworkers. It was the people on the trails that were surprised to see me. It came from a lot of different angles. So I went to community and tried to find folks that look like me, and also events that look like with people that look like me. I truly love events. I know that's going to sound weird for some people. I know that events can be such a game changer and also have such an impact to strengthening communities. And events change the world. I know that sounds really, really far-fetched, but everyone here probably knows of Woodstock, the March on Washington, and shoot, even Coachella with all of the problems that it is. I won't dive into that, but events have tremendous impact. So I used the skills and knowledge that I had to do something different because I knew I could do something different. And I knew that I never wanted anyone else to experience what I experienced that night when I was simply just trying to get outdoors. And there are a number of other issues that we can address through partnerships. And there are a lot of things that we're going to get wrong. This work is not easy. It actually is a little bit messy at times, but it's worth it in the end. When I launched the Refuge Outdoor Festival, I knew that in order to achieve what I wanted for the community and what the community seemingly was asking, I had to find the resources that I didn't have. So I started reaching out to nonprofits and businesses, community organizations, land management agencies, government entities. And one of the folks I connected with in that first year was Washington State Parks Folk and Traditional Arts Program Manager, Makeala, who you'll hear from later. I wasn't sure what a folk and traditional arts program manager was. So we started to just talk, and she was telling me about her work, and I was telling her what I was hoping for. She answered my random, silly questions sometimes, but we started building a relationship. And from this relationship, we have grown our partnership for not only Refuge, we have also launched the Sundays Outside and are in the process of launching the Unearth Project. And through this all, we also did it during the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, we had one concert, which was Sundays Outside. And since the pandemic hit, we have been able to produce 11 episodes of this Sundays Outside series. We've partnered on so many projects, but we've had a lot of tough conversations to get to the meat of the issue. And I just want to talk about how relationship building can be one of the ways to help you build a more equitable future coming out of this pandemic. I'm just going to ask or say this. What if I said one of the quickest paths to a more inclusive and diverse future was through partnerships that allowed BIPOC and other marginalized communities to build their own table? I think we've all heard the saying, we just want a seat at the table. You'll hear more about tables a little later. But over the last few years, I've really learned that when speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and partnerships, I think it's important to talk about power dynamics. A lot of the old ways that we were operating is about control and power. So let me walk you through a few of the old ways that I'm thinking about. Exclusion. Before we talk about inclusion, let's address the fact that exclusion has been the way of operating in a number of things and systems. And frankly, it hasn't worked for all people in the community. You may have heard the saying, nothing about us without us. This way of operating has really left a number of communities without the resources that they need or access to the things that they need. Another old trope or another old way of thinking is the savior complex. And I'm going to quote Lily Watson, an Indigenous Australian artist, activist, and academic. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. I know it feels good to say, yes, we did a good thing by supporting these communities, but we can't continue to just pat ourselves on the backs when we do the smallest things for under-resourced communities. Another thing to consider is impact versus intention. While positive intention is important, hopefully none of us come to this work with negative intentions, so I'm just going to assume that. The important thing is we can cause harm in wanting positive impact or intentions. So we all have to take accountability and responsibility when something negative does happen. And like I said, this work can be messy and partnerships can be messy, but we have to strive for a different way in order to get different results, especially at this time. Another old thing that I would like us to retire after this session today is the time and energy spent justifying and proving the value of your work to take resources from communities. And you might say, what does that actually mean? I am talking about our number of grants. Let's just talk about grants in particular. Some grants, the things that you need to be able to access the resource that is trying to be shared, provides another level of a burden on these communities that may have been under-resourced. So please consider the burdens when you are engaging in new partnerships, in particular with BIPOC or other marginalized communities. Look for the ways that you are creating additional burdens and shut that down before you even get to the partner that you're trying to work with. Some new ways that I would highly encourage. Number one is allow communities to have a bit of self-determination. I don't feel like I need to explain that. We're all outdoorsy people. We know about self-determination, and we should be able to, in our positions, our roles, and our influence, be able to allow that for other communities. Number two is don't tokenize. And I'm just going to straight read the definition of tokenization. It is the practice of making only a perfunctory or symbolic effort to do a particular thing, especially by recruiting a small number of people from an underrepresented group. And in particular, around sexual or racial equality. What I'll say about this is Black History Month or Latino History Month or Indigenous Peoples Day are not the only times that you can have those identities in your programming. We are knowledgeable people. We can provide information, resources, or not resources, information. Well, we could provide resources, but we can do things outside of those months that you're trying to uplift that community. Number three of doing something different is listen. A lot of the story that you heard me share about Makeala was a lot of listening, a lot of just engagement before we even got to what we would be working on. Number three is, or four, put your money where your mouth is. And I do mean money, I do mean dollar signs, but also sometimes money is not the thing that the person needs. It may be access to the land. It may be access to equipment. Ask Makeala. I'm always like, can I borrow a tent or pop-up tent or a table? Sometimes that's the resource that they need. But let's also be clear. Sometimes it is financial resources. So please be mindful when you are working on new partnerships that you are considering all of the ways that you can resource that organization. And then finally, I would go back to listen. Listen again is going to be what I'm always going to say about partnerships. So self-determination, don't tokenize, listen, run that check, and listen some more. Before we transition to the panel, I want to take a minute to acknowledge that we are living through a triple pandemic. The COVID-19, the racial reckoning that's been happening, and now this economic downturn. We're just in a really, slightly messed up situation right now. And the world is still has a lot of oppressive systems that we should all be working to break down. So I know I've talked about the outdoors, events, and partnerships, but I want to leave you with a few tips about breaking down oppressive systems. First and foremost, history is so important. So I'm challenging each of you to learn and acknowledge the impacts of the way the systems at your organization may have been oppressive or racist or affected some other ism. Also begin to recognize that your definition of the outdoors is not universal. I'll just talk about myself. For a number of years, I went out walking at these national state parks in the US and around the world. It wasn't until 10 years ago that I actually learned the term hiking. So that really is a clear statement of your definition of the outdoors is not universal, as well as we live in the US and there are a number of languages that there are no language for the outdoor recreation terms that we use here. In particular, I know that there's no word for hiking in Spanish. So just be mindful of the way that you define and address the outdoors when addressing a diverse body of people. Number two, I say do your work. There's so much work to learn and build community and listen. There's a personal journey that I think every person is tasked in taking in order to build a more equitable future. Let's also drop the myth that BIPOC and some other communities are not outdoorsy. This is a myth. I do not like it. It is not true. Trust and believe we would not have made it to 2021 if we were not outdoors people. Next is if your partnerships and programs look exactly like you, and that's not what the broader community looks like, you have a lot of work to do. Your work can begin by searching out and diversifying your personal community. Yes, I know that's giving you extra work outside of your work, but it's the work of building community. It cannot just stop at 5 o'clock when you go home or whatever time you get off. So continue to actively engage because you don't want your community to be an exclusive situation. Next is don't be a gatekeeper. Become a powerful ally, co-conspirator, accomplice. I'm not sure what word you want to use, but become that for folks that are from diverse communities, especially those that are not within your community as well. So I talked a lot about the outdoors and partnerships, but at the end of the day, I use events, the outdoors, and partnerships as a tool to break down systems of oppression and make us to have a more connected and equitable world. I think these are important, especially coming out of this pandemic. Before we move to the panel, seriously now, I would love for you to each write down a few questions to take along with you throughout the rest of this conference and moving forward. Consider the ways in which you're operating that are the old ways of doing things. And question 2, who are you actively listening to in community and why? Question 3, who are you not hearing from in community and why? And number 4, what future are you envisioning for your life and work? Finally, what do partnerships mean to you and your work? All right. So now I would love to bring on stage Makeala, Chad, and Jennifer. Howdy, y'all. Welcome. I know that we have all met a few times to prepare for today, and I would love to start, and I'll just toss out the order. Jennifer, Makeala, Chad, if you all could give your own self-introduction and tell a little bit about your partnership journeys. So Makeala, if you want to.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chevon, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this session. My name is Makeala Kroin, and I am a folklorist for Washington State Parks. And I know that I don't get to gloss over that, so I'll just take a moment to explain what a folklorist is and what I do. So folklorists work with cultural communities on issues of cultural heritage, identity, and creative expression. And my program is largely focused on outreach. So I'm doing cultural festivals, concert series, and storytelling through multimedia. And my program was founded as a partnership between our Washington State Arts Commission and state parks. The inspiration, of course, was that parks stewards public places that are already places where communities gather, and they can make excellent locations for community-driven public programs. While the Arts Commission has networks of artists and performers that benefit from additional opportunities to share their work. So folklorists build relationships with communities to empower them to tell their own stories and build their own programs that are meaningful, hopefully attracting audiences that might not feel otherwise welcome or reflected on our public lands. Along the way, we inevitably encounter barriers and find ways to overcome them, whether through providing training or by trying to change institutional systems to better serve the diverse communities of our state. And so that's the context that hopefully demonstrates why partnerships are really central to my work. So I have been working with Chevon for several years now, and our partnership has been an extremely valuable experience in that as we grew our relationship professionally as colleagues, but also as people who work together as friends, I learned a lot about my organization and some of the barriers that different communities encounter when working with me, when working with state parks. We run into systems of permitting, systems of insurance, legacy reservation systems, the accessibility of our parks, and so many more. And so that gave me the chance, the opportunity to then share that story internally with my agency, because we have a lot of work to do. I also really appreciate that all of the programs that Chevon and I partner on, whether they're in-person festivals or the episodes of the show that we've created, they end up having multiple outputs that go beyond the day of the festival or the day that we screen an episode of something. I'm able to build relationships and connect members of Chevon's community with members of our state park staff. I'm able to develop new programs and invite some of the artists that I've worked with to participate in other ways at other programs. So a lot of the artists that Chevon has introduced me to, I'm so excited to work with again that I plug them into a concert series at a state park in a different part of the state, or I look forward to creating new festivals with them in the future when we're able to do so. And so the benefits of partnership can be incredibly extensive. And I just want to echo that Chevon's words when she says, be a good listener, know that this kind of work might feel like emotional labor, but it's something that's been missing. When we focus on the outcome of a project and not the process and the relationship building along the way, we miss so many opportunities to have these deeper engagement experiences. And so with that, I'll pass it along to the next panel member. Thank you, Chevon.
Awesome.
Jennifer?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Wilde. I'm the Director of Outreach and Development for Adventures Without Limits. You might also hear me refer to it as AWL. We're a nonprofit, adaptive, and inclusive outfitter based in Forest Grove, and we provide outdoor recreation opportunities for folks throughout the state, primarily in the Portland metro area. AWL's mission is to provide opportunity and adventure for all people, regardless of ability level, socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity, or age. And we achieve this mission through partnership. AWL works with more than 30 different nonprofit partners, school districts, rehab facilities, summer camps, and more to reach communities who may face barriers to access outdoors. These partnerships allow us to leverage the resources, the facilities, the expertise, and relationships of our community partners to reach new outdoor enthusiasts, to access different outdoor spaces, and elevate the voices of our community to advocate for increased access and opportunities outdoors. One such example that I'm particularly proud of is our Campability program. This is a unique partnership among nonprofit organizations, public agencies, land managers, and for-profit businesses, where we invite folks with disabilities to camp, kayak, cycle, and visit the coast at various state parks throughout Oregon. This program was spearheaded in partnership with Oregon Spinal Cord Injury Connection, the Oregon Health and Outdoors Initiative, and Oregon State Parks in 2018, and we've been growing every year since then. In this partnership, we each bring our own unique skills and relationships to the table to provide access that wouldn't be possible otherwise if we just worked with one organization alone. So in this partnership, AWL is the primary outfitter. We are the experts in adaptive recreation, and we have specialized equipment that we bring to facilitate these experiences. Oregon Spinal Cord Injury Connection is a community-led organization that has access to Oregonians with spinal cord injuries and is led from members of that community. They're the primary outreach partner. So when we're inviting folks to participate in an activity that may be new or unfamiliar, there's that trusted relationship, providing that warm welcome, and there to answer questions. Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, specifically Oregon State Parks, has been the facility manager, and they've been really great in allowing us flexible use of different spaces and helping us identify more accessible features in parks so that we can invite folks to have a positive experience outdoors, and also using day use areas or when maybe a group campground is not accessible, or helping us reserve yurts at the coast in the summer in Oregon, which are sometimes really hard to get those reservations. They've allowed us access into those spaces where people really want to be outdoors. Oregon Health and Outdoors Initiative is a community connector and advocacy partner. David's Chair Outdoor Mobility Systems brings action track chairs so that when we're hosting events at the coast, folks can use those to access the beach. David's Chair alone owns probably $50,000 worth of equipment that we don't have. And by bringing folks together, they're able to access, to have a more enriching experience. And on top of that, REI has come on board as a business partner, and just trusting our collective work at these organizations. They've brought resources to the table to advance our collective goals of a more inclusive outdoors. So just the power of partnership is really amplifying and expanding what we're able to do alone. Together this summer, we hosted 5 events. We served 264 participant user days, 76 unique campers, which included 35 people with disabilities, 24 Black, Indigenous people of color, for a total of 5,238 hours in nature. It's pretty impactful. These programs have not only provided that enriching experience for our communities, but they've also helped inform best practice and policy for increasing access for Oregonians with disabilities by elevating the voices of community members and building a wide coalition of supporters for this work. We're really grateful for all of our partners, and we're really excited for what we've been able to achieve by working together in partnership.
Awesome. Thanks. Chad.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you for having me. And Chevon, yes, that's awesome to hear your keynote, and it was great. I am the president founder of Soul River Inc. and Love is King. Soul River Inc. is based off of basically working with at-risk youth of color and merging them with veterans, combat veterans, and disabled veterans. Identifying places throughout Oregon and beyond Oregon that are at threat, wild spaces, and we go into those spaces where the relationship starts to build between that veteran and that youth on the water, centered around fly fishing, and centered around outdoor leadership and education. Our ultimate goal is to raise these youth into environmental leaders for tomorrow, and we follow them from our deployments to Oregon and on to Capitol Hill. My second nonprofit that I run is called Love is King. And Love is King is based really off of is picking up the work of Dr. Martin Luther King, really where he's left off. And it's advocating the love of community, basically, and bringing people back together. But the most important thing about Love is King is dismantling hate, racism, ignorance, and bigotry in our wild spaces, in our city parks, being able to create safe spaces for BIPOC to be able to move through and create beautiful memories with their families or individual, et cetera, in the outdoors. And so under Love is King, we have 2 initiatives, which is heritage events that we work really close with partnership with Forest Park Conservancy. Also the blessings of having a great partnership with REI. So thank you for that. And that's centered around creating entry-level outdoor opportunities that gives us an opportunity to celebrate people's holidays, their people's culture, and we bring that into the outdoors as well. Our second initiative is Operation Roam, which we just finished this season, our first season, which I facilitate and work closely with BIPOC leaders and bring them into the outdoors and up to the Arctic Circle. And basically, we facilitate leadership amongst the BIPOC leaders and work with them on advocacy development for our public lands and our fresh water and our wildlife. When they come back from our Operation Roam, they are paired with a conservation group. And out of the 10 BIPOC leaders that we did this summer, we have 5 that's working with Forest Park Conservancy, and we have 5 that's working with the Alaska Wilderness League, because their voice matters just as much as everybody else's voice. And now we have this opportunity to bring them to the table for their voices and their experiences. That also helps in establishing and supporting our legislative bills, or passing our acts, et cetera, whatever the BIPOC leaders are working with at that time to help with that conservation group. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, one, I would like to say thank you all. You all do such amazing work. So I want to start there. But Chad, I'm going to toss the first question to you. Folks, don't forget, you can throw your questions in the chat and we'll answer those after we get through our questions. Chad, my first question is, social wealth. We had a conversation when we were first discussing this, and you had a definition, or you described social wealth in order to make partnerships, and you described it in such a way I would love for this audience to hear.
I will do my best to try to describe that one. I think, with social wealth, we forget about the build on the relationships and how valuable those relationships are versus transactional all the time, because we're so wired to build our relationships off of transactions all the time. And I think there's a historical piece to this. When you look at Native Americans and how they work together, even back to even slaves, et cetera, everything's built off relationships. It's about how we work as a community. It's about, leveraging in the mindset of, can I borrow that sugar? Because I need, or that milk, et cetera. And we work as a community to build, and that community becomes our wealth. Due to so many years of this shift, when the government came into space here, transactional came into space. And when that's how we started to build our relationships more on transactions. And just because it's transactions, that's just one way of building that transactional wealth. But when you talk about social wealth, it's about that community. When we're talking about, even today in 2021, building the dismantle of hate and racism and bigotry, one strong way to actually dismantle that and work together, and also with allies to be able to start learning how to work together and building that community together. When we can build that community, we can actually be able to find those kind of resources that's needed, because each one of us carries a certain type of resource into that pot. And so when we start to work together, we are becoming wealthy all as one, and we are able to dismantle what's in front of us with the support of our community. My businesses with Love is King and Soul River Inc. is literally built off of social wealth. And I practiced that since day one when I first launched Soul River, but it was my default, because the fact that I launched, it was not the investment of money, it was the investment of people, and it was the investment of relationship, and the type of relationships I was able to build that actually was able to give me opportunity to be able to not just take, but to give and share. And so I think, with social wealth, it comes with a sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice of a calling that's beyond you. And it's about your people. It's about your community. And I think there's a big value into what we do, especially when it starts talking about our own community and putting the value forth. It's like passing it forward, literally passing it forward. So it's definitely kind of, you can look at it almost like a resume, but it's beyond the resume. It's about your character and how you build yourself into that community, and how you align yourself with those folks. I've found myself in situations where social wealth is so much of a gain, and it's actually, to me, it's actually powerful than actually the dollar. And the dollar can give you only so much, but social wealth can also give you access into spaces where money cannot give you access, and it's very powerful when you align yourself on that type of clout of alignment of a community. You're very powerful in a position where you are to do what you need to do. And sometimes it's done without the financial support. It's done by many different resources that comes into play of the wealth that you built amongst your community members.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like every one of us do that without having that definition, or that, like, that the way that you speak of it. I want to jump back a little bit too, because I skipped my first question that I had prepped y'all on, which I'm sure you'll go back into this a little bit too, Chad. But what do partnerships mean to you and the work that you're doing? And let's reverse the order. Chad, Jennifer, Makeala.
Partnerships, to me, equates opportunity. It equates a lifeline for community to be able to thrive, not survive. And so having the right alignment of partnerships, it opens up the opportunities to bring more people into spaces, which I'm working with BIPOC, and to me, those opportunities allow me to be able to become much more stronger in our position to bring more BIPOCs in teaching and engaging and facilitating and fostering leadership. Partnership is a lifeline. It's a lifeline of how we work together. And it's also a place of respecting one another as well. With having the right partnerships, it equates a success, a thrive for not just you, but for your community.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, Chad, and I think I touched on it a little bit before, but I think for AWL, partnerships really just increase access to community, access to space, to resources to do this work. And it also really just builds the coalition and the wide breadth of support so that we feel like we're not doing this work in a vacuum, but when someone else's vision for access and inclusion is shared with us, then together we can amplify this work.
Partnerships are just the core of what I do. I have a statewide program that is based on outreach, and I can't actually do that alone. I can't tell anybody else's story for them either. But I do have the power. I do have the power now that I work for a state agency to help more people do that for themselves. And not only does it make my job possible, but it brings more interesting stories, more creativity in the approach to programs. It fosters intercultural and intergenerational experiences. Theoretically, it connects more people. And partnerships are really great at bringing people together. And so it is what guides my work and what inspires it and what keeps me going.
Awesome. Much appreciation. Yeah, I will say just from my perspective too, I would not be able to do anything that I do. I am a little more than a one-woman shop, but not much. I do not even have, if you add everybody else's hours, I don't even have a full-time person supporting me. So it is through my partnerships that I'm allowed or not allowed, but I am able to do the things that I've been able to do in the last few years. Switching gears ever so slightly, Jennifer, I have a question for you. We have been talking about partnerships, but I want to talk a little bit about community feedback, collaborative partnerships. You mentioned the word coalition as well. Could you tell us, I know I talked about tables and I said we'd hear a little bit more about tables. Could you tell us the story of the table? I'm just going to call it the table.
Yeah, happy to. I did take notes as you recommended during your portion, Chevon. So I have the idea that folks no longer just want a seat at the table. They want to have the power to create their own table. That's one of the direct outcomes of our campability program and our partnership with Oregon Spinal Cord Injury Connection and Oregon State Parks. A little bit of background on the story is that Oregon State Parks knew they were about to adopt an ADA transition plan. What that is a 25-year plan to correct violations to the Americans with Disabilities Act in parks throughout the state. There's a list of probably 5,000 or more things that are as simple as the height of the soap dispenser, the width of the doors, parking spots, things like that. And then probably more complicated or more resource intensive fixes would have to do with like the infrastructure to the outdoor environment itself. But we didn't want to wait 25 years for parks to be accessible, and truth, Oregon State Parks wanted to find out what could they do in the meantime to make their spaces feel more welcoming and inclusive for Oregonians of all abilities. So the first time we went to one of the parks, we were hosting a site visit to decide where would be a good place for us to host a camping event for approximately 10 wheelchair users. And they started bringing over all of the quote unquote ADA picnic tables that they had for our groups to use. If any of y'all have seen them before, typically an ADA picnic table just has extended boards on one end. So there's a space without benches for someone with a wheelchair to fit under there. We're like, well, that's great, but that allows space for one person at one table, and we have 10 wheelchair users, and we don't all want to sit at different tables while we're having dinner tonight. So I have to give credit to West Lividay of Oregon Spinal Cord Injury Connection. It was his idea to say, what if we just took the bench off one side, just remove the bolts? That's a low-cost solution. And then we can have multiple people roll up on one side, and then we can sit together at a few tables instead of each at our own table, isolated throughout the park. So we did that for the first few years, and it worked well enough. It was a creative solution. People on one side of the table had to sit and eat with their elbows on the table, so we didn't flip backwards when you had the weight distributed on the other side. But it worked in the meantime. The cool thing was that Oregon State Parks saw this opportunity to make people feel more welcome and access parks differently. And they took this idea to the drawing board and designed a picnic table that is balanced with a bench only on one side, so that multiple chair users or folks that bring their own seat to the table can sit together. It's really neat that we've been doing this work for 3 years, and really just by showing up and stating a need, now we've created a new product that's available at parks throughout the state. And this past summer was the first time that we got to camp and use them, and just the reaction from participants and saying, someone was thinking of me when this was built. That feeling of welcome is something that's just really unique and special. And I think I get excited because I think it's the idea of the curb cut effect, right? Where it's built with one idea in mind, but we're going to find all these other uses of how this table is going to be helpful for community members. And so already Adventures Without Limits has benefited, because when we're serving a buffet style meal and you don't have that bench on one side, it's a lot easier to access your food and make a plate. So there's a lot of ways that this one small change, this idea from a community member, is going to serve lots of different uses in the future.
I think that's super dope. I think that's amazing. And I think, I'll ask this question. I will say, sorry, this is a surprise question. Speaking of, coalition / multi, organization partnerships, and this is a question for anybody, Jennifer, if you want to go first, you can. What are some of the key takeaways that you had from that experience / what are some of the recommendations that you all would have when working with multiple organizations on the same projects like that?
That's a great question. I think one piece that I think about for us is kind of trying to stay in our lanes and doing what we do best. I think it's a good way for us to all have the greatest impact and leverage the skills and resources we bring. But another important piece of that is creating not just a seat at the table, as you were talking about, but creating leadership opportunities so that all of us can take a step back and listen to community members to say what they want, what they need, and how the rest of the partners at the table can think about the resources and the access we have to advance those recommendations.
Thank you. Oh, Chad, we can't hear you. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you say that question one more time, please?
When working with groups, multiple partners at the same time, are there any tips that you would share with folks about working with multiple partners at the same time?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got a lot of tips, but I'll just share one big one. Yeah, one of I would, I'm always like really, I'm all about thinking out of the box and doing things very unconventional, and I think today that's kind of like how we have to operate. Traditional is great, but especially when we are talking about working with BIPOC, at-risk youth, et cetera, even veterans, we got to be thinking differently in how we approach things. And one of the big things that I request when I'm working with a partnership is asking the partner to create a internal committee and that committee is a committee that becomes an extension of my team. And we are able to work together again, what I just created was a community. So we build a community between an outside partner, which is like Love is King. And then I request a committee that's an extension of Love is King internally with that partner. And so now we have developed this little small connections of community to where we start to work together from an internal and an external, and we start to solve problems together. There's a constant reporting going back and forth. We're holding each other accountable, and we have full control on our outcome, which is really what we're trying to do is thrive and be successful in our execution. And so instead of me going away, just traditionally like going away with a partner and say, hey, I'll see you later, let's talk this day. No, it's now I have a committee that I can actually be able to connect with all the time on an ongoing basis, basically. I believe in, boots on the ground and working together and building blocks, and in order for us to do this project or build out this event, and if it calls partners, then it's about having that right type of community to build these kind of building blocks, and it's going to take both sides to make this happen successfully. So that's one of my big things that I've always looked for when I'm working a partner is how can we start working together on ground zero. Financial resources, I get that, that's all there, but my main concern is how do we align and how we start to work together and create the right synergy to make this work, basically.
Absolutely.
That was tip number one.
Yeah. Makeala, did you?
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say, coming from the perspective of someone that now works at a government agency, I would say if you're already at a table with partners, you probably have an idea of what the outcome of that program or project is going to be. But don't be overly attached to that because always, and even more so in the times that we're living, we need to be responsive to what's going on with our partners, what are they dealing with, and that comes back to having that relationship of trust and respect. And so the outcome of a project can look differently than you thought it would when you first brainstormed that idea. But ultimately, the outcome is meant to serve the people and not be a standalone thing that isn't reflective of the reality of the partners around the table. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Makeala, since you mentioned it, now you're a person on this panel, and we have a lot of people in the audience that are land management organizations, and you've been within an organization and you've been on the outside. Could you tell us what you think it means, like now that we are, you mentioned the pandemic as well, and we're talking about equitable futures. What do you think it means to have an equitable reopening?
Yeah, thank you. That's a tricky question. And I think, as you mentioned, as someone who's worked for nonprofits, but now is working for a government agency, I would say we have had this opportunity, at least if you're in a position similar to mine, where a lot of the work that I did either paused or has taken a different form during the pandemic, we have the opportunity to look at some of the systems that impact our users. For state parks, we have reservation systems, we have requirements for permits or for getting insurance for community events, or the system that we use to contract with partners. There is so much inequity baked into each of these systems. And it is a barrier for a lot of the partners that we would like to work with or would like to empower to use our parks and our systems independently. And so I think this has been an opportunity and continues to be. I mean, we know that this is our shoulder season into our non-busy season, right? We're in October now. We have a few months before things start ramping up again. You might say, well, I mean, I write contracts. I don't think I can do anything differently. I don't know how to change this. And that is completely untrue, because we all have things that we can do within our power to think about how these systems impact the people that we're working with. So I encourage everyone to think about, even within your role, whether it's in stewardship or in interpretation or any other, there are ways that we can have positive impacts in being better partners, because the government is not always a good partner. And we really have a higher burden to be a good partner because we have access and management responsibilities. So think about how you can be a better partner in your work.
That saw one of your tables, Jennifer, at Rooster Rock State Park, and they dropped that in the chat. So I wanted to throw that in there. And I want to ask Chad and Jennifer as well, for you all and your programs and the things that you all do. What does a fully reopening, an equitable reopening look like for you all?
Jennifer, you want to go?
Sure. For me, I think the future of outdoor recreation and inclusion is intersectional. And so I think an equitable reopening will consider a variety of lenses and a variety of voices. One thing you were talking about earlier, Chevon, was tokenism. And I think a lot of times it can be easy to get stuck in our few trusted partnerships and ask the same person or contact again and again to represent this group that's much bigger than just them. So I think if we're really looking at equity, then we're going to bring a lot more voices and a lot of different leadership to the table from a variety of perspectives. And there can be more than one perspective within one identified community as well.
Yeah. I think as far as the answer to that question, I think, being what I envision, it'd be great to see more diverse of voices coming forth. The more welcoming of culture background, the more acknowledgement, not just because of the land that we stand on of indigenous, but actually bringing those indigenous voices as well stronger into the forefront, and celebrate that. And I think it's also with that whole equitable piece is, I think the equitable piece also challenges the traditional of systems that's in place relating to the laws and regulations of recreation in our public lands. And so bringing more diverse voices into spaces that's tied to wild spaces, fresh water, is going to challenge that. And it should probably end up dismantling that and recreating something that speaks for everyone, something that everyone can be able to benefit from. And in these days of time, those systems did not include gender. It did not include African American, Hispanic, etc. So I think, full equitable is also challenging the systems that's already in place and looking at those systems and rewriting those systems for today's people, today's community, moving forward in our outdoors and recreation. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Chad. And it reminds me of, we're all trying to work on these systems that are not serving everyone, and specifically for our communities that we're serving or are part of. And I would love to just throw it out and ask you all, this is a little bit away from partnerships specifically. This is just in general. What's your biggest tip for everyone listening today about breaking down those systems that they see in play? I told them to consider what are some of the old ways that are not serving all of the people in your community. What would be a tip that you would have for them as we address breaking down these systems that are not serving us? And anyone can, we can just popcorn that question.
I would say remember the power of storytelling. So let the people who are being impacted share the stories of how that's impacting them, because numbers and statistics are helpful, and it's what a lot of organizations make decisions based on. But the true impact of a story, just like Chevon, you started your plenary with a story, a personal story. People connect to stories. So for example, if I want to change the way that we require insurance at our events, I'm going to have to make that case in partnership with the communities that it's impacting the most, because otherwise it's just going to be the status quo. Nothing's going to change. So remember the power of storytelling.
I think, sorry, Chad, I can go.
No, go ahead.
When I think about the thing that's been most helpful for Adventures Without Limits in my experience is just when we've worked with people who trust their partners. If you're going to enter into a partnership with someone and we want to continue to break down barriers, we need to rewrite the playbook, right? We need to do it differently, and just plugging people into existing systems doesn't give space for leadership, doesn't give space for change. So I think trusting people to do the work and doing the work in the way that is best for their community.
There's a lot of, it's a really big loading question, Chevon, systems. The one that comes in the forefront is actually tied to a little story, but it's information systems that of what we are told and how we supposed to be if we go into the outdoors, meaning how we supposed to dress, how are we supposed to build a fire, etc. And I think those informational systems is told one way, but there's also many other ways of, especially when you're talking about BIPOC that has deep, rich cultures and indigenous, they have a different way of how they would approach and be in the outdoors. It's interesting because I had a BIPOC leader that I worked with up in the Arctic, and he's from Portland, Oregon. And it's a little funny humor here, but it's something that I had to pay attention to. But we got in Fairbanks, Alaska, and using Fairbanks as our base camp before we were heading into the circle. And we were doing some last minute shopping, and he came out of the store with a huge big watermelon. And and he wanted to bring that into the Arctic circle backpacking. And, you know, and so even myself, I had to kiss myself because I've been wired and told and trained. There's certain things that you do and that you don't do, right? You know, and I had to stop myself because, you know, that was something that was connected to him. He wanted to do that, and it was very important. And so I allowed that, and even though he had to bear that weight, you know, but he celebrated that in the Arctic Circle in his own way, you know, and that was really awesome and beautiful. And of course, we all, you know, took the low fruit because he's the one that carried all that weight, and now we're all in the Arctic eating watermelon, you know, and it was phenomenal. I don't think anybody's ever brought watermelon into the Arctic, for God's sake, you know, but it was very rare and it was awesome. But the thing is that I had to stop myself and allow that space, right, for him to be able to be celebrated in his own way, and did not take that away from that. If he went into any other, say like a program, say like Nose, and I have a lot of respect for Nose, but he went to Nose, that's something will not be allowed, period, right? You have to follow. And so that's what I'm talking about. Like some of these systems we have to rethink and look at, and that is meant for someone else, but it's not meant from a lot of people, especially when it talk about rich culture, et cetera. We have to have those open opportunities, allow people to express themselves. How I would go into the outdoors is completely different how that other person would go, you know, and we need to understand that, you know, and my differences, it also rolls itself over into reevaluating the systems that are put in place. And with the decision makers out there that are in charge, it's, if we're talking about equity and we're talking about bringing people together, social wealth, et cetera, those decision makers need to really pay close attention and look at those systems, and because that's their charge, and that's where they can actually help as allyship of working to make sure that everybody is celebrated in the long run, period. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now I made a face because when you said a watermelon, I'm like, I'm not carrying no watermelon.
I was right there with you. I was, trust me, I wasn't going to carry it either, but he carried it. But I definitely ate some watermelon in the Arctic Circle, though.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But it's also a prime example of our definition of outdoorsy or outdoors is not universal, because he felt that connection to that fruit, that he wanted to make that extra effort to make it happen, that he was the person that brought watermelon to the Arctic Circle. Right. And we have to allow for room for that.
Right.
Sure.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw out our last question as we wrap up. And, you know, today has all been about like just sharing our stories and providing information of what we've done to make a more equitable outdoor community. And, you know, we've lived through a rough last 18 months. Let's just be real clear that the last 18 months have not been necessarily fun for anyone. So as we start hearing this build back better, how are we coming out of this pandemic, racial reckoning, and economic downturn different? I would love for each of you just to share in, you know, just a few quick seconds, just like your one piece of advice you want to make sure that everyone hears from you as we wrap up today. So I'll let you all decide who wants to go first. And then, yeah. So what one piece of advice would you give that you want people to write down on that piece of paper that I told them to get a pen and paper for? What is that one hit?
I can go. I can't take credit for writing this, but I've heard it described as, you know, we used to say the golden rule was to treat others the way you want to be treated. And now the platinum rule is to treat others the way that they want to be treated. And I think that's the big thing that I'm hoping we're learning in this past year is exactly what you're saying. What's right for you, what's outdoors for you may not be the same for someone else. And so, again, just trusting lived experience.
Awesome.
I would say approach partnerships with curiosity. Don't come with an idea of what you want to get out of a partnership. Be open to the amazing things that can happen when you are curious and you listen and learn from your partners.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, you're welcome. I think the only thing that comes to mind right now is, our green spaces are equal spaces um, that's that's for all of us, and we're only visitors into these spaces, and we all have a place uh, in these spaces to recreate together, observe, bird watch, etc. Whatever you want to call that. It's a space for all of us, and we all need to really understand that, the playground of the levelness of the playground there. It's an equal level play field for us all, and out of respect. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank each one of you. Thank you, Makeala. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for your words of wisdom, your stories, and actionable steps for us to build a more equitable future through partnerships. As we wrap up, I just want to leave the audience with a few things. Going back to the beginning, I told you to remember the word unbelievable. This is a time where this time we're living in is unbelievable, but we're here. The work we have ahead of us isn't just, about getting out and just having fun or one-off outdoor experiences through partnerships. This is about building long-lasting community and impacting the world for better. This is about making the unbelievable believable. I believe that having a connection to the outdoors is one of the most powerful and beautiful gifts that you can be given. And I bet everyone here has had an outdoor experience that truly impacted you. Look at where we are today and the careers that we've chosen. But each of us also have the opportunity to do this for others in a more equitable way. You may have been moved by something I said or one of the panelists said, and I just want to say that I've learned so much today, but I have learned from so many amazing people, like the three people on this panel, and also engaging with Steph and Kellen. I want to say with immense gratitude, thank you so much for having me speak to you all today and allowing me to put together this panel for your conference. I'm going to wish you all the best. Please take forward some of your notes and those questions throughout the rest of your time here. And thank you again. All right.
All right. What a wonderful way to kick off our 2021 Outdoor Recreation Summit. Just a huge round of gratitude for the wisdom shared by Chevon and Makeala and Chad and Jennifer. I know that I will come back and reference this session here on the Summit webpage, which is a cue for me to remind all audience members that our summit is recorded. And for the next sort of short while, sessions will be available here online. Later in the fall, they'll be transitioning over to YouTube, and we'll share links out to everyone when that happens. And with that, I want to hand it over to Summit co-organizer Steph Knoll with the Oregon Trails Coalition, who is going to tell you a little bit more about what's in store for the rest of this afternoon.
Thanks, Kaylin, and thanks to all of our presenters who helped us set the tone for our 2021 virtual sessions. I want to let you know that two of the organizations you heard about today, Love is King and Adventures Without Limits, are our film night partners who we are celebrating Wednesday night with our film night. So throughout the summit, you'll see emails with links to their websites to learn even more about their work. And you'll see a link as part of our film night kind of session description where you can donate to their work directly to support more of these great partnerships into the future. I want to take a moment to thank all of the individuals that helped bring this year's summit to launch. I want to thank our sponsors, the Summit Planning Committee members who shepherded this program into being. and especially our third management committee member, Hillary Sager at Travel Oregon, for all her work on the event. I also want to thank the team at Brand Live for all their work behind the scenes to pipe this content into your homes and offices. I want to thank Trail Keepers of Oregon and all the volunteers around the state who kicked off the summit with trail stewardship work parties yesterday. TKO and CODA are both leading more trail work parties next Saturday to close us out. So if some of those events still have space open. If you'd like to spend a day out on the trail Saturday, moving dirt and cutting brush and ruminating on all you'll learn this week. We want to let you know that at the close of each session, you should find a session evaluation link under the video player window. You may also see the link posted in the chat. We'd love it if you could take a few minutes to fill out those session surveys to help the committee learn from your feedback and shape future programming. And lastly, deep thanks for joining us for this opening plenary. There is so much great content ahead the next few days. Next up at 4 p.m. Pacific time is our celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreation Trails System Act. We would love for you to join us to learn a little bit of the history behind Oregon Trails system. Here's some signature trail updates from around the state. Be there for the big announcement of the 2021 Doug Newman Award winner and chart a vision for the next 50 years of trails in Oregon. We hope you can now step outside, stretch, and join us back here at 4 p.m. for another dose of inspiration for how we might partner on a shared vision for outdoor recreation in Oregon. Thank you, everybody.